So Saakshi is currently working as an assistant professor at the Department of Electrical Engineering at IITJodhpur. That's Indian Institute of Technology. So the IIT group is one of the tier one group engineering university group in India. So for those of you who are not from India, there are people who are not from India. So Jodhpur is a really nice city which is in the western part of India, right? And she has previously worked as a SERB research scientist. That's something that is an honor that is given by the Indian government, the Indian government Department of Science and Technology, and also she has been an Inspire faculty, which is again another honor, which is given by DST, right, Saakshi?
Yes.
Yeah. And she got these two honors when she was working at the Center for Biomedical Engineering and the Center for Applied Research in Electronics at IITDelhi, which is yet another top premier universities in the IIT system. And then she also went on to work at Amity Institute of Nanotechnology in Noida. And after doing those stints, she has now joined IITJodhpur. And one of her current projects, research projects, is funded by BIRAC, which is one of the very prestigious, well-known funding agency, and is working towards developing an indigenous alcohol breath analyzer. She has more than 40 research papers, to her credit, and we will, try to extract all of that experience that she had, and also not just that, her experience in advising students also into how to write, because that is a lot more important, and also her experience in reviewing papers as well, because that again will be another aspect that we will be touching upon tonight. So thanks a lot, Saakshi, for coming and joining us. And before we go into the actual thing, I would first want to know from you, how did it all happen? Because this is a question we ask all our guests. Why, how, and why, and when did it all happen that that bug for research got into you? Let's hear that story a little bit.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sourish, for inviting me for this program. I'm actually quite excited to talk to people and then students and many more colleagues, right, who would want to know more about research and writing papers.
Sure.
And and very good evening to everyone who has joined in. So I completed my master's in electronics way back in 2006, and my project supervisor there was getting some equipment, so he got some good grant, and I could see a lot of equipment coming into the lab, and he was kind of setting up things. And as any professor would need help from any student who they can just get from anywhere, and they said that, why don't you help us set up few things? And when the things get installed and you actually see samples being made, that kind of excites you. So that was the time when I thought that I should try for research for some time and see if I can actually do a PhD. For students who are doing masters, PhDs, it is a long process.
Right.
So first you have to actually get into those shoes and see if you're kind of comfortable or not. So that's what I did. I tried being in one of the projects, which he was PIO. And after 1 year, I think I started my PhD. So during that 1 year,
Was he the source of the inspiration?
That is absolutely true. Yes. Yeah. My professor, my guide, he's currently in Center for Nanoscience and Nanotechnology at Jamia Millia Islamia. So he was actually an inspiration. He said that you try for once, you get into JRF, see how it works, and later you decide if you can do PhD or not. And actually, when you do work by your own hands, right, that experimental research,
Yeah.
then only you get to feel that, okay, you can make things, it's possible. And
Yes.
with the equipment setup and all, it's like a big supporting system in research.
Yeah, that's
So,
absolutely true.
yeah, so that was the time when I thought, okay, I should try research, that too in experiments. So I'm complete hands-on person in simulations and all. I still feel that it's not complete till you actually do it by your own hand. You have to do it.
You're right. Right,
So
right,
that
right.
was the time when I started with PhD, and it was after one more year. The phase is that there is no paper, and then you feel, what are you doing in research, right? This is like it happens with every PhD student.
Everyone. Yes.
And after 1 year, they actually question their guide. Are you sure that I will be able to complete my PhD?
Right.
But it's true
Right.
that once you start getting one paper and then you get more confidence, and then there is no end. It's
The
entirely up
ball
to the
starts
student.
rolling. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah.
Great, great. So, yes, so this is one point, guys, folks over here, that never get demoralized. The first paper is always, a sticky one, and it will take time, but just bear with it. It happens
It's a
to
lot of
many,
time.
many, many people,
Yeah.
right? And once that goes into it, you get that momentum. You also get to know a lot about how to write a paper, how to frame the problem
Yeah.
statement, and so on and so forth. And that's exactly what we are going to touch upon tonight more. So Sakshi, I was just wondering, the very beginning is, I see a lot of people, they do this, that they are not very even sure where to even target,
Yeah.
in terms of journal, or if it is a conference proceeding. So where to target even, right? So any tips on, with your own experience, or there may be different techniques, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. So, first thing is that the first paper a PhD student writes, right? The first cut when you actually give to your supervisor, you get it back all red. It's always red. There is no
Yeah.
line which is black and white. So it goes through many, many, many iterations. So first paper can take over a year to actually come into shape. And then is the time when you want to know where I publish it. So first thing is to understand your own work. You have to know what kind of scope your paper has, right? So what strength it has. So is it more of materials? Is it more of a technique? Or is it more of some application specific? So accordingly, you have to filter out. So that's the kind of homework any PhD student must do, to see as to these are the set of journals, and these journals may publish my work because my paper fits into their scope. So we have to know the scope of the
Right.
journal as well. Otherwise, what happens is sometimes students submit their work to a journal,
Right.
and after 4 days they return saying that this doesn't fit in here. And it's demoralizing. I mean,
Right.
it's your first paper.
Very demoralizing, and,
Yeah.
and a lot of times they don't even tell that, and then a
They just
rejection comes
reject it.
in.
Yes. It just says returned or rejected. So it's like, where am I at fault? I wrote the best paper I could. So it's important to match your paper strength with the scope of the journal. That's very, very important. And
Right.
then once that is done, you also should know the journal metrics. So if I filter, say, X number of papers from a lot, then I should know which stands at the top, right? So you can kind of put them in terms of impact factor, right? So you know how old the journal is, how much people are reading it, how much people are following it. And then you have to know that what all scope your paper has in that journal, right? Reviewers will like it only when they see it to be different, right? Any paper has to be unique in its own way. So no plaid. You cannot have anything from anywhere just like that. So
Right.
once,
Right.
yeah, that's all editors do. They do a plaque check first before even they send the paper to any reviewer. And then you must know that once this paper is read by a reviewer, the first thing that probably they'll see is, when was the last time this kind of paper was published in the same journal? So if I write on material A and that material A was published in that journal in the last issue, then probably they might not take it because they already have similar information very recently published. So it's also important that you have to see that you are taking, you're publishing it in some other journal. You have to compromise. It's sometimes a trade-off. So that is required to be done, but this is kind of study you have to do before you actually target any journal. And then you must also follow the protocol that the journal has, the typesetting and everything. You know, it's just that the editor, when he or she reads the paper or sees the paper, should feel that you have done enough homework before sending it to the journal.
Right.
So journal metrics, journal scope, these are some important keywords that people should see before they target any journal.
So Saakshi, will it also help that, you know, if people actually when they do literature survey, then they actually pick up those papers which are really popular or top cited, which are from that specific journal which they are trying to target, and try to understand the writing style, the structure.
Oh yes, absolutely. So to write a paper, you need to read lots of papers.
Right.
So more you read, more you understand the flow. See, you might have results which are really special, right? But how to write it is also very, very important. How you project your work, how attractive it is, what kind of graphs it has. Some people find it really difficult to just go through the text without any figures. And some people put figures which are kind of same in say, two sets of figures. So certainly first you have to read lots of papers. With that process, in that process, you will also get to know the kind of journals you can publish.
Right.
So that becomes one of the way to find out, okay, these are some 10 sets of journals where my kind of work can be published. So that in a way makes it more easier.
Right. And you know, and so I guess people are aware of what is impact factor or what is H index, and if you are not aware of these metrics, then it's better that you should you know, you should look into where you can actually find these things. One particular link that I can give you is basically Schemago SJR. So you can see there are different types of indexes and so on. There are other places also, and for those people who are from computer science and allied kind of disciplines, also I guess Saakshi, conferences matter as well. Right.
Yeah,
these days actually conferences are becoming really important in fields like computer science.
Yes. In fact, in any area, because it's important to connect. And how do you connect? You only connect through conferences. In fact, students who have kind of preliminary work done and they are still continuing some part of work, that time they can always target, say, an IEEE conference if it's engineering background, and you must publish in that conference. So what will happen, even if it's a poster or oral? In fact, posters always attract more public. Students have this thing that we should get oral presentation, but it's not an honor. In fact, posters are more cited because people walk through and if they like it attractive, they will definitely stop by and keep it in their memory.
And also I guess the interaction is more.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yes, one should publish in a conference and then extend that work. Then you can always publish in a journal. But the best way to connect to people is conference. Otherwise, just journal publication. See, people will read your work, but you will not be able to meet them.
And exchange of ideas, which is so important for furthering your research.
Yes, certainly.
Right. So there is a kind of like an allied question that I keep getting from a lot of students, like, you know, what is the distinction, you know, how much to, you know, if I am targeting a conference, then can I also publish in a journal, and what should be the delta between a conference and a journal, you know, because a lot of in a lot of disciplines, in most disciplines, journals are given more weightage in an academic setting, right? So, what is that, so to say, the minimum publishable unit, if one can say,
So in IEEE conferences, when you publish, say, a conference paper, and then later, say, the conference organizers say that we can publish it in a journal for you, they would always expect at least 40% more work done than your conference paper. So this is the kind of thing that if the work is only 10% more than what you have submitted in a conference, journal might not even, I mean, they might not even entertain, because it cannot be the same paper being published at two places. So it's important that you publish a work which is much more than what you have published in a conference. And yes, when you say a journal publication, I agree that you get to see the impact factor, and you feel that it's a journal publication. And in fact, even in our academics, right, when a student is nearing the completion of PhD, they ask that how many papers have you published? So in engineering, if you say IEEE conferences papers, they are okay. But if you say 4 journal papers, it's wow.
Yeah.
So that is true, that journal paper is given more weightage because it goes through a certain review process. But any conference publication is also important, because that's the only way you tell to the people that I am doing this work. So that's
Right.
kind of the first few steps that you have to take.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to add on to that, another thing that I feel is that your conference paper may not necessarily have to be very, very thorough in terms of all the different ways in which you would be wanting to do your experimentation. As an example, if your research is experimental research, but in journal you may better make sure that it's quite robust and quite thorough, your evaluation or your experiments, and so on and so forth.
Yes, in fact, in conferences, sometimes students just show the poster and they want help, from a scientist or from a senior professor to understand that I'm now stuck here. So what do you think would be the best idea? So, and once they advise, they go back and they complete their work, and then they go for a journal publication. So that's why, conference interaction that ways helps a lot.
Right. So if you have any questions on this particular topic, how to choose a conference or how to choose a journal, keep posting questions. We'll be glad to answer them. So what we are going to do is now, so having set that context, which is that, okay, so we now know a little bit about how to choose a journal or how to choose a conference. What is the difference between the conference content versus the journal content, and why? What is the rationale even to go for a conference, right? So now the next topic that I want to discuss with you, Saakshi, is basically you have sort of like what I've seen, a lot of students, they get something like what we call as a writer's block, which means when they actually start writing the paper, they are stuck. They don't know where to start or how to write it, and usually a lot of people just start writing. I have seen a lot of students, what they do is that they start writing from top to end sort of, and when they do that, they start writing with the, let's say, the abstract and the introduction, just the way the paper is, usually how you see your paper. So any tips or any suggestions on on this aspect, like how to even start it out?
So this is very similar to explaining it to a child also, how to write. So what do we do? First, we make them identify letters. I'm saying it because I have a young 5-year-old boy and I'm going through this phase. So what do? We first tell them read and understand, and then you speak and then you write. So it's exactly the same. I have lots of, say, research ideas, and I have done wonderful experiment. I have around 10 graphs with me, but I don't know how to now put this puzzle properly to actually see the picture. So I think what one should do is, before you even start to write, you must read papers. Read papers of your area, read good papers, well-written papers, good journals. One should not just follow any paper, because sometimes some papers are misleading also. So that kind of judgment, they actually, PhD students develop the skill when they are actually writing their first paper. So read good papers, good index, H-index authors' papers, and then you should try to put things in a sequence. So when you actually write your first paper, it will be all haphazard. So you target 6 pages, you will write 15, right? But then you start to cut it out. So that happens. It's good to put more information in the first place, because then you can actually edit it rather than having missing information and then adding in. So most important thing is one must read good papers. Once you read papers, you will definitely understand the flow of what is required to put this manuscript in place. And then it's important to have not just good graphs, right? Good explanation. So there are lots of papers which people write, but they have put very nice pictures, but they don't know how to explain it. So then you can write it in very simple language in the beginning and then polish it further. So after you read papers, you write a lengthy paper, really lengthy, and then really cut it down. So that will require even rereading your own paper almost 50 times.
Yep.
And your supervisor will anyways just cut it through.
Right.
Need help of your supervisor, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think that if you are more in a lab environment, then where you have other students also working in a group, then do pass around your paper.
Yes,
that's
exchange.
something.
Yes.
And get feedback not just from your supervisor, but get feedback from other people as to who are working on allied or closely related problems, right?
In fact, it's good if somebody is working in a totally different area.
Yeah.
Because when they read it, from from their understanding, it will be totally really bad, which is good. That bad feedback helps. Right. So you really don't want really beautiful, well-written kind of remarks in your first draft, because it's shabbily written.
Right. And what I a lot of times what I suggest is that when you're reading these good papers, very well-written papers, and try to get a pattern of the blueprint from the papers. That's what I guess Saakshi was saying, like the structure, like the flow. And try to note it down, sort of like how the flow is working out, so you will see 2, 3, 4 maybe really good blueprints coming out.
I have seen students when they write introduction part, which is like the main first part of your body of the paper, it's really hard for them. And introduction is nothing but a very brief literature review that you can only do when you have read papers. So that's what we tell our students. We give a template and we say, okay, here comes your abstract, then is your introduction, experimental section, results, discussion, conclusion. You have to fit in your paper in this template. And actually that helps, because once you know the flow, right, then you can put your things right at that place.
Right.
So that ways, reading is extremely important. Like you said, that you can give it to your peers, your friends, your colleagues. It's actually great if they can give some feedback on that.
Right. And a lot of times it happens, I have seen people complaining that I give people I write the paper and then I give it for feedback, and it doesn't come at the right time, and so on and so forth, right? So I think and even that happens for those kind of supervisors who are extremely busy, or who may have multiple other students and committee works and other kind of service works, right? So it may very well happen that so I have seen people complaining, but at the same time people giving the draft or the the draft of the manuscript at the very last minute. So
that happens. But I also feel that if right, the supervisor is so busy, after giving the first draft, you yourself prepare the second draft, right? So that is where you can take help from your friends. I mean, that can be different scenarios, that some people get different supervisors who are really quick, some take time. So that is very, I should say, it becomes people specific. So those scenarios can happen. But Also, sometimes when it takes so long, the paper comes back so beautifully. You know that now if you polish it, it'll be almost fine.
Right.
So I think what supervisor wants to see is how much effort the person has put in, how much serious the person is in framing the first draft. And that's
Right.
very well reflected in the paper. You can just make out.
Right. Right. And I have another hack, so to say. Like, if you really feel that people are super busy or people are not having the time enough, then what you can do is that, because you see that what is the main crux of that draft. And I guess the main, for if you are into experimental research, then the main crux would be your experiment, and through your experiment you will be trying to support your claim, right? Or if it is some sort of let's say non-experimental research, then again there will be some qualitative method or some sort of argumentative, through facts and evidences you will try to support your claim. So at the end of the day, you are always trying to support your claim. That's
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
basis of the paper.
Yes.
And I think that if people don't have time, then one interesting thing to do is that to first share around the main meat of the
Yes.
body instead of the full paper and making everybody getting overwhelmed.
Yes, that helps. That certainly helps.
Right. And another thing that Saakshi I've seen, and this is where I would definitely like to have your comment as well, is I have seen some people making this mistake that they start writing a paper and then they realize that they have not done this and that, and and then they start doing experiments, and then the experiment result will come to some very different thing, and then they and then
Yeah.
they have to reposition the paper altogether.
That's true.
And a lot of times what happens, if you don't have time, especially for conference papers, when you really have a deadline, and this is one problem I have seen people facing, that they immediately start writing the paper without having, because I remember you was just saying that first absolutely make sure that your figures, your tables and everything is all set and all ready.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely, yes. So in fact, when, like you say, people are sometimes, they just want to do it. Or supervisor says that this conference and we have to submit and you have 15 days to frame it. So at least in experimental research, one of the challenges is that it is true that sometimes when you do things and you repeat, they don't happen the way they were earlier. So when experimental research is performed, you actually repeat the experiment 3 to 4, maybe more times, depending on what your application area is. So, and this is one of the very important things that are required in a paper. People ask how many times you did it. So like it happens in simulations, things are set in the software. So the climate will not change, right? And the temperature around the room will not change your experiments. But in simulation. But when you do hands-on, then a lot of things, even temperature, moisture, can
there are a lot of
change
variables.
everything. Exactly. So in that case, it is always good to have that variable already taken into account, and then you repeat the experiment. So if anybody questions later that did you do it 4 times or 5 times to verify, you kind of have that data. So if you are just submitting it because the supervisor is asking you to, and you have only one set of results, I feel it's not justified. I mean, you can wait for another conference, but better have results which are reproducible so that nobody can challenge it. Because ultimately, you will then want to frame it into a journal paper, and you can't have 180-degree different papers of the same thing.
Right. This brings us to this nobody can challenge, which is, because I feel like this is very, very important for the research student to actually wear the shoes of the reviewer. So how does the reviewer think? And how will the reviewer look at your paper? So that is so important, which you have already started touching upon. So if you can just elaborate on that a little bit. Yes.
Yeah. So when the reviewer receives the paper, right, first they see the name of the journal, then they say, okay, it's fitting into the scope. Generally, this kind of homework is already done by the editor, but it's just to be sure that paper has that kind of, scope that fits in. And then they see the keywords, and then they read the abstract. So abstract becomes extremely important, because
Hmm.
that's the crux of your work, right? So that's why people say that your title of the paper and the abstract are two important things that reviewer will first look at. And nowadays, even graphical abstract has become very important. So
Hmm.
journals give you an opportunity, like that becomes a USP of your work, right? How do you sell
Right.
it? So
Yeah.
I make a simple, small figure which says everything what my paper has, and um, and that has the complete information. So that becomes important part. Your graphical abstract, keywords, title. This is something that reviewer will first look at before actually getting into the paper, right?
Right.
Then the other thing reviewers want is that it is written in good English. It is possible that there are errors, but it should not be that people can't understand only. So it has to be written in a proper manner, in the correct format, and then in the correct sequence, so that it's easy for them to understand what you are linking up to. Most
Right.
of the people do mistakes of this, the figure numbering is incorrect. That should not happen. It's
Right.
actually very difficult for the reviewer to check and then recheck and understand. Probably you're talking about some other figure, but you have numbered it incorrectly. So the formatting has to be taken care of very well.
Yeah.
Then one other thing that reviewers look at is the reference section, right? What kind of recent references have been included?
Yeah.
So unless it's a fundamental theory that you're explaining, which is say mentioned in a book published in 1992, then it's fine. But it cannot be you say that recently this work has been done and you quote something of 1995. It's like not taken. So one
Right.
should ensure that the references are well in place. Whatever arguments you are talking about, you're able to defend it correctly. You're able to say this is happening because of this. So this because and these answers and reasons are to be very well mentioned. You
Right.
cannot just explain that this is the graph and this is what it says. I mean, anybody will understand X and Y axis. I know this is happening, but then people want to know why.
Yes, this is so
So,
important. I see
yes.
that missing in so many papers which I review.
Right. So if you don't answer that why, that leaves reviewer, in a pool of questions. And then they pour it out on your review. And then
Yeah.
it goes as major revision or rejection.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
Right.
important that you lay out your paper really very well. So that, and that also requires rereading. You have to go through your own paper. You have to wait for, actually, what I do is, I don't know if it is useful for everyone, but when I write a paper, I give a break of 2 days and then I read it again and I realize there are so many mistakes.
Yes. Yes.
So you
Yes.
give it to somebody or you wait for 2, 3 days, give it a pause, read it again, and you will find lots of mistakes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So this is also very important. Give it a pause and then again read your paper. So
Yeah.
how to be your when you're reading your paper, try to become your own reviewer, sort of.
Exactly.
In a
Yes.
very, and don't have any emotional attachment and just try to be absolutely ruthless. When you're reading your own paper.
I mean, that's
I
but
know
that's
it's
very
very difficult.
challenging.
Yeah, I
Yes,
know it's very
exactly.
difficult. Right. So there's a question. Let's take some questions. So one question is from Nishani. Hi Nishani, and her question is, Madam, my field is social sciences. Is our research paper format different from what you explained? Um I guess, yeah, Sakshi, if you can,
Okay.
answer that
So
question.
it's
Yeah.
mentioned that which sciences is she has mentioned something specific.
No, that's the thing. Social
Okay.
sciences is very broad.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Social
yeah,
sciences, yeah.
yeah.
So, but if we talk about the format, so that's what is important. That once you have read some papers in your area, so your area can be bio, it can be chemistry, it can be social sciences, right? So it's important to know the format of your own area kind of paper, right? So you have to read papers from your journals, your area specific journals, and you have to lay out your own format. It might be absolutely different from engineering. That is very much possible. But then you have to know from the papers that you have already read as to this
Right.
is the flow, this is what is needed. And then
Right.
it will give you a good idea.
So the best probably steps or algorithm or recipe for you, Nishani, is to go and look at the top journals of criminology. That's your field, and especially go a little deeper, which Saakshi said, like not just journals in criminology, because there may be so many journals, good journals in criminology, but those journals where your research problem fits well, right? Which you are trying to do, and then pick up the top or the most cited ones. Maybe on recent times would be better, right, Saakshi?
That's what I feel. I mean, because you'll be doing research on something which is upcoming. So it always helps if you go through some of the recent works. Yeah.
Right, and then look at the structure. Look at how people are actually those really good papers. How they are trying to structure, the papers in your area, in your specific research problem. What is the structure in general? At least in many different areas of social sciences, in general, the basic structure which I have seen, because in RACS we are constantly analyzing a lot of different papers from a lot of different disciplines, right? And in general, what I have seen is that the overall structure in social science is almost pretty much the same, and these days there's a lot of experimentation that is going on even in social sciences. Social science is becoming more and more experimental, right? So it's a lot of sample studies and statistical analysis and so on and so forth. So basically that is probably the at a structural level, the introduction and the problem statement, the main approach. And then if you are trying to evaluate the approach, or either you're evaluating the approach through some experiments or some sort of qualitative research methods, or your analysis, or your approach itself is an experiment, so it's experimental. So either one of them you would be doing. So one more thing, you hinted on that, Saakshi, which is the citations. And you said that either the topic should be, the citation should be quite recent, or if it is not recent, then at least first of all you need to make sure that the topic is kind of a forgotten topic sort of, and you are trying to revive it, right, Saakshi? That's what you were saying. So sometimes it happens.
Yes.
And
yes, it is.
And if that is happening, then you really need to make sure that you are actually truly reviving it back.
That's true.
And then I guess it is very important that at least you mention why certain contemporary researchers in your field feels that the revival is necessary. So at least that recency has to be there, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. In fact, it can be, so research can be of two types. Like one you mentioned, it could be a forgotten topic, right? And I bring it out and say, okay, this is important, nobody is looking at it, but this is what new we can do. The other is that you work on absolutely trending area and new topics or upcoming technologies and say that I want to contribute in this. So I think whether you work on older topic or you work on the newer topic, when you do research in any area, what people look at is that what contribution your research will do to us, right? It's to the society. So it could be engineering, it could be social sciences, but the idea of research is coming up with something new and different, and you're able to contribute to the society. So when you say that, you want to just do research, it cannot be something that person A has done the same thing, right? It cannot be that person B has done exactly the same thing and you're just repeating the recipe. Then you're not contributing. You're not even adding to it. It's a replica. Then it's not a very attractive approach. So it could be a forgotten topic, it could be a new topic, but it has to be contributing in some way or the other. Yeah.
Right. That
And only
that
then
is
it's exciting.
then it's, yeah, otherwise it's now just for the sake of reviving something. It's not really interesting your research community. It
Yes,
has to be very very interesting to your research community. Otherwise it just,
absolutely.
people will not,
Right. And you can
your
only
reviews are
see.
going to be very harsh, at least, yeah, clearly.
And also that, I mean, that's the way you get energy, right? When you're doing something different, something exciting. I mean, that's what, otherwise you can't survive in research. With the amount of patience you need to read papers and write papers, if
Right.
it's not a unique work that you are doing, then it's somehow it doesn't give you that
Right,
feel.
right. And you know what? I think that, don't try to do the citation work while you are writing. That's what I am. I feel that while you are writing, don't try to find things and then try to cite things, because then what happens is that you will not do a good job positioning your approach with respect to other people's approach. So the literature survey, as I think the literature review, Sakshi, which you were saying, had to be very very thorough even before you start the
Yes.
writing process.
Yes, that is true. Literature review is very important. In fact, when the person starts a PhD and there are some topics that the guide and the student mutually agrees upon, the first thing that the person is told is read.
Yep.
Read and then make presentations, explain. In fact, new students always have this complaint that why are we asked to make so many presentations? But the fact is that that's the only way you convey it to your team. You're not individual, right? You have supervisor, you have your batchmates. So you convince it to your team, you convey to your team that this is what I want to work on.
Right.
And this is what is recently happening. And this is what my idea is. And this is how it is different. So it kinds of prepares you for the final takeoff. So I
Right.
think that kind of practice session is extremely important. I'm sure
Right,
my students
right.
also don't like it, but I tell them every week we are
No,
meeting and presenting.
and one more thing that came up, just, which means very very few people at an early stage, even at a later stage, I've seen like very few PhD students actually fail to realize, and do they actually, rather they realize that it's so important to master the art of how to express your research.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I agree. In fact, my own first PhD student at IIT Delhi would used to have this thing that why why is it that we have to present? Why do we have to discuss all the time? And why is my first paper taking so much time? So these are all genuine questions.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
because
yeah.
because these days, even if you have to get a grant, somebody was asking me a question about how to convince funding agencies to get grants in theoretical subject. I will be, Sakshi will touch upon that. But yeah, even to get a grant, Sakshi, it's very important that you develop, because at some point, if you want to get into academia or even in corporate research, you have to
Anyway.
you have to make even more presentations all the time.
That's true. I mean, all your meetings are presentations. There is no discussion and just no tea time, right? Everything
Right.
is based on presentation and how you express it. Like you
Right.
rightly said that it's very important. It's the same as writing it in a paper, right? You have the content, but you don't know how to put it in a beautiful way so that reviewers like it.
Right.
So it's the same way as giving a presentation. That's what we tell all students. Learn to give good presentations. It always helps because you
Right.
will defend your work at the last day. We will not help you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also the art of presentation, like whether you are giving a presentation to your own community versus whether you are giving a presentation to a broader
Somebody
community,
else. Yes.
versus in corporate you would be giving presentation to top management who only knows about business and nothing else.
That's true. That's true.
So that's again another art that you really need to develop if you have to succeed in your career.
Right.
You
And
know.
sometimes funding agency will give you just 3 minutes or 4 minutes and tell me
Yeah.
what your proposal is. So you have to actually.
It's like an elevator pitch.
Yes.
Right.
So you have to just think that this is the slide and that's it. So this decides your funding.
Right. And that's why, do you want to take this question up a little bit, Sakshi, just touching upon more about theoretical topics, and how to
Okay.
attract funding.
Yes. Okay. By Swagatam.
Yeah, by Swagata, yeah.
So, hi Swagata. See, fundamental research is somehow it's implicit, right? When we do even any application-based research, see what funding agencies want to know is if you do this fundamental research, are you giving something new to us, right? So they even see building this making this vaccine for coronavirus. Somewhere it started from fundamental. Of course, the need was totally different and it's more application oriented, but everything comes from fundamental. But if you keep the proposal to only fundamental, then this question you should ask to yourself, that funding agency will give me money because, right? Because people who will be competing with you for the same grant might show some application.
Right.
And somehow I feel that you can project an application, right? You may not have the application right then, or you don't have it in mind, but you need to link it to application because that's the why you can say that this can be contributing to this area. Right. So if I say that I have, say, Raman spectroscopy, this is an equipment, and I get some graphs, right? This is fundamental research. I'm getting the graphs. But where I can use this graph? Can I use it in medical domain? Can I give it to, say, some industry? So that projection has to be there. This is what nowadays funding agencies look at. That if we give you this kind of grant, right, then what will you do with it? What will come out of it? They also have to project that we gave this grant and this is what we got.
Right.
So it's give and take kind of thing. So if you are not able to, say, work in application, it has to be projected. So you can give that fundamental research to anybody. You can give it to some other academic organization, some other group which is working in application, and say this is my contribution. They'll be happy to take it up.
Right. And this brings me to a kind of like a related thing that, keep reading. I always say that keep reading tech magazines and research magazines, top class research like Scientific American, Science, Nature, MIT Tech Review, because the more you read such magazines, the more you will get to see the connections between your fundamental research and what's going on out there, what people are talking about, and you can very interestingly make that connection. And also it might influence your fundamental research questions as well. Like what should we, the other way around.
Yes, that's true. And in fact, you will be able to answer those questions yourself before even the funding agency would ask that where will you use it. Yeah.
Right. So keep reading about lots of different applications in your periphery, even if you are working on fundamental research, I would say. Yeah. And talk to, this is another thing as actually I've seen that people don't, fundamental researchers don't talk to applied researchers. Applied researchers, there's no cross-pollination that is happening, although they are living in the same campus. They are going to conferences where, same conferences, but somehow they kind of close themselves into their own small community, and they don't try to talk to each other in terms of what can I give you, what can you give me.
In fact, so that's a very interesting thing that you're talking about, because nowadays funding agencies are looking at projects which are like cross disciplines.
Absolutely.
So if I say that, okay, I'm in electrical engineering and this is what I will make, give me money, they will say no. If you want to build it, if you want to build something, you want to work on an application, who all you need, get them on the board. So now, in fact, they insist that there should be teams where you have people from electrical or mechanical and also social sciences. In fact, there are lots of ways by which we see that social sciences can contribute so much in all our cognitive sciences and even these brain related projects. So, and in a way, if you have that bigger team, right, you can come up with something really substantial. So this cross pollination somehow, I agree, doesn't show up so much nowadays. And you see people are busy in their own research.
Yeah, but I don't understand something, Saakshi. What I don't understand is that why don't students, just with a cup of chai or coffee, why don't they just talk?
They should just meet and talk. Yes.
Yeah.
And that helps. That will help them build their own network by the time they hit from academia.
Yeah,
they will have a good group. Yes. So in fact, for faculty members, it's good in a way that they can get into some bigger grants through this multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary kind of projects. And students, of course, students need to network, irrespective of whatever domain the other person is from. You can just talk about things. How a motor works can be electrical and mechanical and many more.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
That's what we talk.
Let me just get to another question, which is very, very pertinent to today's topic. This is from, let me see. This is from Shruti Krishna. Her question is, hi ma'am, can you give some suggestions to take care while writing a literature review paper, like a survey paper? Yeah, so that's an interesting, very good question, Shruti. Yeah.
Okay, so she's asking that why it's important to write review paper.
May not be that question, but maybe we can touch on that as well. But first, and then how to write a good survey paper.
Oh, how to write a good survey paper. Okay, that's an interesting question. Yes. So when you plan that you have to write a literature review, right? What do you first need is your notes, and your notes should be full of the recent and older research that has happened in that domain. Say if I talk about, say, a ventilator, say making a ventilator kind of paper, right? So what do you need to know is that starting from, say, 2021 and I go backwards, then what are the kind of papers that are there in making a ventilator? So people have tried technique A, technique B, technique C. So those should be in your notes already. So you should have notes, like you should have almost 50 pages with you.
Like and the different paradigms.
Exactly. And then you have to put it in your own words. So you have, say, A to E techniques, right? You have 5 techniques, broad techniques, and then you start to group your papers into all those techniques, and then you do a comparison. Survey and literature review is more to do with how you understood this technology has come up till today. So it's more of a comprehensive literature survey plus your own understanding of the subject. So once you put down things that person A did this, and then person B did this, and then this group did this technique was first started in this year, and this is how it has evolved over the years. By the end of that review, you will come down to which technique is, say, more acceptable than the others and why. So that why comes is where your reasoning is. And most of the reviewers would prefer to, to have a table, a comprehensive table where you will have all the techniques compared. What did you get as an outcome of those techniques? What are the kind of references you have cited in? So it need not be just past 2 years. It has to be past 10 years at least.
Yeah.
If you can cover up more, it's great. It's up to you how much you can cover. But recent is important. Recent most is important.
Right, absolutely. Because and a lot of times many people don't understand. This is where like the motivation for why to write a survey paper. A lot of people don't understand that if you have a very, very good survey paper, you can get a lot of citations.
That's true. And in fact, all these survey papers are mainly linked to how many people are reading your work. Right. This is actually not your work. That's why it's even more difficult to write a survey paper, because you're actually collating information and putting it in your own words. It's just extremely difficult.
Right. And I guess one of the tricks that if you can do it, it will be really nice, which is when you are collating things and try to do a little bit of comparing and contrasting at the same time, positioning things together, not just saying that this is this and this is that, but how they are related and how they are different, and maybe a little bit of your own opinions.
That's true.
That kind of makes it, solidifies it, and helps you to actually even to you can then now have that ambition to submit in a very good journal, where especially journals which favor surveys a lot.
Right, that's true.
So there is another question from Sambhavi, and her question is, ma'am, how can we know that we are following the good papers, because sometimes it feels like I am going directionless.
Okay, so you need to do a journal metrics survey. So you have to look at, say, top 10 journals of your area, put them in an Excel sheet, write their impact factor, say you should put it in the decreasing order, right? And then you should pick up papers from those journals. So you can look at some websites where, like, Science Direct websites give you all these Elsevier journals information, right? So you can look at these browsing engines, and there you can then put the keywords, what you're looking at, and that will kind of show you the name of the journal. And your Excel sheet is already ready. So you know, okay, I have to read papers from these journals, and then start reading papers from there. So that way, it gives you a good idea. It's important to know where the paper has been published, right? And also, in fact, nowadays there are a lot of open access, accessible papers who actually pay for, their own open platform. And those also are very easily accessible.
Right. And one of the things that you need to make sure while you do this thing, is that make sure that you are looking for papers. So there are multiple different ways in which you can look for papers. One is try to look for papers which are similar to your research question. So that's one kind of you're trying to filter it down, or like a funnel. Right. So at a very broader level, you can look for any papers that are related to what you're doing, but then you can fine tune it and filter get into those papers that are similar to your research question.
Yes.
And then you can fine tune further and go into those papers that have similar approach, or different approach maybe than what you are looking at, for the similar problem. Or if you are doing survey paper, then you can go for diverse approach or diverse problem, even like related but diverse problems. So there are different ways in which you can look it up. So of course the citation factor is important, but I would say sometimes really good papers take some time to get the citation number. So where you are, I think I totally agree with Saakshi, like where that is getting accepted or published. The prestige factor of that venue, whether the journal or conference, is very important, I guess.
And even if we look at the H index of paper, or we see the citation index, right? It is possible that somebody published in a very recent technique or technology or area, and so they quickly got, say, like even this pandemic time, right? So many people published about coronavirus. Was there earlier also, but was not getting so many citations. But suddenly now everyone is getting like 200, 300, beyond. Even if you publish something small. So that's somehow, it depends on the scenario, and then it's
your
luck
topic
also in some way. Yes.
Right, it's luck, it's topic, it's the trend, it's the situation, the social, political, economic situation, a lot of things.
A lot of things.
But better is that you don't worry about those things, because those are variables which are not under your control.
About research.
Right. But do care about the prestige value and of course citations and so on and so forth, but be specific. That's what I would suggest, that be specific to the research problem that you are working on, or the approach that you want to check out, and so on and so forth, right? And then there is another question from Apeksha, and Apeksha's question is, ma'am, can you suggest a good journal or good research sites which help in reading good research papers in sciences, and what is error which we will avoid during writing research paper? I think the errors during writing research papers, we have covered quite a lot of different types of errors that one can make mistakes that one can make. But I mean, it depends, I guess, right, Sakshi? Like, depends on what kind of science you are in, right? And
Absolutely. Even if I say bioscience, it's very, very wide.
it's very wide.
So yes, yes. So I think if they want to look at journals, they can just Google as to um, say this area. So see, the best is that once you know your area. So if I say your area means if I know the problem statement, right? I can pick up keywords from those problem statements and look at papers which are matching with those keywords. And once I do that, I will come across some journal papers which are from the same area. And then from those papers, I will know the journals. So it's actually like going back.
Going
So
back,
it's
right?
yes, yes. If you start to just look at sciences, I mean, you can spend over 5 years and you may not be able to read all the papers also. It's very, very wide. So if you know the keywords of your problem statement, just put that. Then once you start downloading papers, you will see the year, you see the name of the journal, you see the team which is working on it, right? And that way, then you can start preparing your Excel sheet where you will put in the names of those journals which are best suited for
Right.
your kind of work.
Right, right. So, let me see if I have missed out on any other question. No. I just wanted to tell you something. I can't stop my temptation that I actually did, Sakshi, a series of episodes on how to write a paper.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that's on YouTube. So I'm
Okay.
just going to share that with people over here. So you can later on go and if you like these videos, then you can subscribe because we keep making such videos. And also the other thing is that we do have a Discord community which has been shared right at the top of the chat panel, where what we do, Sakshi, is that we are trying to build a online community of researchers, research students, senior students, junior students, so that they can help each other out, and we can also keep because we, it's why to wait for a Saturday with Sourish. Like, so there are many other things that we keep finding resources, nice tutorials, nice lectures, or softwares that can be useful for them.
Right.
So we keep sharing those materials. So that's a community which all of you can join. And ask questions, and if you have very specific questions for Sakshi, maybe that you have not asked it tonight, then just put it on Discord, and I will try to get the answer from Sakshi. I hope, yeah. And if you want to ask me very specific questions, then let me just put my email address over here. If you have any questions that you want to ask me specifically, then that's my email address. And sort of like we are almost out of time. Anybody who has some final questions? Otherwise, it's time to wrap up, I guess. Let me just double check whether I have missed anything on the chat as well. Not.
So this is something that researchers must do, ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions. This is another thing. Yeah, I would definitely say, like, don't be shy about, all these questions that you asked today. Keep discussing that with your supervisor, right, Sakshi, like with you, because a lot of times you don't ask these questions and your supervisors may just assume that you have gotten it.
That's true. Even in conferences, even in lectures.
Right.
At maths, what will happen? Somebody will not answer. That's all.
But many people will answer. Many people won't answer, but many people will answer, that's what and that's what you want, actually.
Right. I agree.
Okay. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you, Saakshi, that you have given me the time.
Oh, please don't say that. Even I didn't know how 1 hour just passed by. It was nice chit chat.
Yeah, great. And I hope, we hope that it has been helpful right, Sakshi, to our audiences. And I
I
know that
hope
you
so. I hope
usually what
so.
happens is that because of the time zone and everything, a lot of people are not able to attend the
Yes.
session, but just after the time zone you will get to see the videos going on. So I do hope for those people who will be watching in the future that this has been a productive session, a productive Saturday with
Thanks.
Sourish.
I can put my email address here in
Yes, yes,
case
yes, yes.
anybody has questions, can connect to me
And if
offline.
anybody wants to do research on the topic which Sakshi is working on, then maybe you can reach out to her to see if there is a position open or not. Whether she is
Sure.
taking students or not. Right?
Sure, sure. It'll be nice to connect to people. At least
Great.
I'm a researcher, so I love to
Yeah.
connect to people.
Great. 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 So thanks a lot one more time, and stay
Thank
very
you.
safe, stay very healthy, and take very
You
good
too.
care of yourself.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, bye bye.
It was
Bye.
great coming here.
Great,
Thanks.
great,
Thanks, Dr.
great.
Sourish.
My pleasure, totally. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.